Need to mail merge, but in Excel? Unfortunately, Excel doesn't have a built-in mail merge feature like Word. But today I'll show you a method on how you can achieve the same result and mass create client billing statements and then email them in bulk. Let's take a look. In this lesson, we're going to populate multiple client billing statements and export them as PDFs using VBA. Then we'll add a second macro that works with Classic Outlook to generate a unique email for each client, saved as drafts so you can review and send them out. For this to work, the VBA code references specific cells in the statement template along with the client's transactions and statement settings tables that are in this workbook. If you'd like to get a head start and want to use this exact template with all the formulas and VBA code, it's available in my shop and I've included the link below. It also includes a separate non-macro version of the original auto-populating invoice template from the lead-in video to this one. Now let's take a look at what's changed from the original invoice template that we created in the lead-in video. Now that video is going to teach you how to set up an invoice template that automatically fills based on your client data. And with that, you'll learn how to use XLOOKUP formulas in these cells that will reference and look up your client database spreadsheet and pull that into your statement or invoice template. So we're building off of that for this video. One of the things that I've added to this template is that we have added a transactions table to this workbook. So I have a sheet here called transactions. And if I go up to table design, I named this as a transactions table. So TBL, TXNS for abbreviated. And we're going to use this to key in all the transactions for any given client. So anytime there's a charge for a service or a product or a payment, we can track that on this transactions sheet. And then I've also added a statement settings tab that contains another table. This table is called statement settings. And this table includes the month range, so the start date and end date for the billing statement that we want to capture. And it also includes the navigation path of where we want to save all of the PDFs once we generate them in bulk. So we've added those two tabs to this workbook. And then we've also made a couple of updates to the invoice template itself. So I've changed this to billing statement just because it captures all of the charges as well as the payments. And so I have added a statement start and end date that automatically links to the statement settings table. And then I've also updated the data area headers down here. We're pulling in the transaction date, the transaction description, what type of transaction, and then the total amount. So there's new formulas over here in the total amount that is referencing a spill formula that looks at the statement date range and then captures either positive for charges or negative for payments or credits. And so then down here, we have our total charges and total payments calculating based off of the data from our transactions table. All right, now once you have this set up, you can test it to validate and make sure that it's working correctly. So if I go ahead and select one of these items up here, I notice that everything's populating correctly up here. I can validate that on my client's sheet. And then I can also double check and look at the client data for client number 3. For January, I want to see one charge of $600 and one payment of $300. So if I go over to my transactions tab, I can look up and I can see client number 3, all of the transactions, and 2 of them are from January. And so I have the charge and the payment for January that are showing up on my billing statement for that date range. Now, validating and making sure that everything is working correctly is a very important step. You want to make sure that your calculations are working exactly as expected. Once you've done that, then now we're ready to automate this process. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to save my template as a macro-enabled workbook. So you can just come up to File, you can save a copy, and just make sure that you save your document as the Excel macro-enabled workbook version, so .xlsm, and then click Save. Now you're going to come up to the Developer tab and click on Visual Basic. We're going to click on this workbook, go up to Insert, and click on Module. Once you click on Module, it will insert Module 1. Now I already have my VBA code pasted in here, and this first macro is going to loop through each client. It's going to check for activity within the statement date range, and it's going to generate a PDF statement only for clients with transactions during that period. It also names each file automatically using the client ID, client name, and date range. Now, if you're building your own template, you can ask an AI tool to generate the base VBA code for you that'll be custom to your version. So this example is going to be create an Excel VBA macro that loops through a table of clients and generates a PDF report for each client using a template sheet. The macro should, and then explain exactly what you want the macro to do. And then also start to reference from your specific template different cell references and table names. You can paste a prompt like this into an AI tool and describe your template layout. Once you have that, you can copy it into your module here and just click Save. Next, I'm going to insert a second module. I'm going to come up to Insert, click on Module, and that will automatically create Module 2. Now I also have my VBA code already pasted in here. And this macro creates a draft email for each statement and attaches the correct PDF. Now, I prefer saving emails as drafts so that I can review them before sending. Saving and opening each message as a draft was something that I wanted to do since I have a relatively small client list. But if you are doing this on a larger scale and you want to prompt your AI to give you VBA code that will automatically send the emails out without opening each one, you can do that. So this macro is only going to work with the classic Outlook version. If you're using the new Outlook version, it does not support VBA automation. So what you can do is you can temporarily switch back to classic Outlook to run the macro, and then switch back to new Outlook afterwards. Now, a good sample email prompt that you can use for your AI tool if you're using your own template is to ask the AI tool to create an Excel VBA macro that generates Outlook draft emails for each client, attaches the client's PDF report, uses the client email from a table, and saves the messages as drafts. So the key to getting good results is being specific about your sheet names, table names, and cell locations. And if you want your code to do something different than what I'm doing, you can prompt it for that as well. Once you have your code pasted in here, you can click on Save and actually close out of the VBA editor. Now we're ready to run our statements, but before we do, just note that the statement settings out here are going to be referenced by the VBA code, meaning that the statement start and end date, as well as the output folder where I want all of those PDFs to be saved, is referenced here. So if I open up my Windows Explorer, I have my file folder open here, and this is where all of the PDF statements are going to be generated. So I'm going to go back to my invoice template, and it doesn't matter which client you may have up here right now. All you have to do is come up to Developer, click on Macros, and the two modules that we inserted with VBA code show up here. These macros are ready to run. So we're going to do the first one, which is Generate Statements PDF. And then we're going to click on Run. I'm going to bring up the Windows Explorer file folder so you can see as that macro runs, all of our statements are getting automatically generated, saved out here with a specific file name. All right, so all of our statements have generated. If I minimize that window, I'll see a notification here that says Statements created successfully, and I can click OK. Now let's go ahead and open up client number 10, which is Bar Booth Marketing. We can double click and open up our PDF, and I'm going to zoom in, and we can see that our billing statement does match correctly. So I recommend double checking several of these just to make sure that your PDF's generated successfully. So if you open up your first one and we see that the balance due is $175 for client number 1, you can come back out here to your statement, select your first client, and make sure that everything validates correctly. So that way you know that all of the statements that got generated in mass or in bulk are correct. Now the next thing we want to do is run our macro to generate all of the emails with those PDF statements as attachments. And I do have Classic Outlook open here at the bottom. So I'm going to come up to my Developer tab, click on Macros, And now I'm going to select the Create Draft Emails for Statements macro, and I'm going to run that. Now, based on my VBA code, Outlook has created draft emails for each client with their statement attached and ready to send. The body of this email is included in my VBA, so I can always update that if I want to. It's pulling in the contact name, and it's attaching the statement automatically. So if I want to double check this, I can verify that that looks correct. And I know that my emails will be ready to send. So I can close out, and I can send each email. Now I'm going to navigate back to my invoice template and notice that I have a message here that indicates that the draft emails were created successfully. So I can click OK there. Now, when you're ready to do next month, all you have to do is come out to your statement settings table and update your statement start and end dates. Then I want to update the file path of where I want those to save. So I'm going to navigate back out to my file folders. I'm going to select a new file folder I created for February. I'm going to come up here and I'm going to copy the file path, hit Control C, and I'm going to paste that in here, Control V, and hit Enter. Next time I generate those statements and run that macro, it's going to generate them for February and save them out in the February folder. So then all we have to do is come back to the invoice template, come up to our developer tab, click on macros, click on generate statement PDFs, and run it. Now you know how to automate generating client statements and preparing emails in bulk directly from Excel. You can grab both this macro version billing statement template together with the non-macro auto-filling invoice template in my shop with the link below. All the formulas and VBA codes are there for you to use or customize. If you want a little bit more experience building out your statement templates or your invoice templates, be sure and check out my other video. I'll show you step-by-step how to create an auto-populating invoice template. If you found this video helpful, be sure and give it a thumbs up to like it. You can subscribe to my channel and visit my website at sharonsmithhr.com. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.